Recapturing recess. Now I know y'all can remember the recess bell, the wave of exhilaration, the sigh of relief, the sheer release, the transformation of fidgeting into linear motion. Raise up your hands if you can remember all that pent-up energy exploding into air and space and wind and sunshine. And if you can recapture even a little of the joy of unbridled movement, then just maybe there's hope for the couch potatoes. Those of you too worn down even to fidget. You think you need rest and food, but you toss and turn in bed, and meals don't really sit well. These bodies just weren't meant for so much sitting and standing, and so little recess. So I'd like to give you a little snapshot of who I am and why I do what I do before I get into the substance of my talk. Yeah, that's a picture of me, 7th grade. Now, I'm a little older than I look. So in 1970, I was approaching West Junior High School in Kansas City, Kansas on a bus to integrate or desegregate it. And the only greeting I got was a gripe from the vice principal to the principal saying, "Damn, wish she was a boy." Now, I could probably wax eloquent on the racism, sexism, and classism embedded in that comment, but suffice it to say that I've always taken those as motivation. So I did, in fact, go on to play college basketball after a year of high school basketball, which was a little bit after the passage of Title IX, the only reason I even had a team to play on. Now, for me, prevention is personal. You'll notice 2 ladies on the far left in the turquoise and the peach. That's my aunt that I'm named after, Aunt Trinette or Toni, and my mother. And then 3 people over is my Aunt Aurelia in the green. None of them got to their seats unassisted because I have a terrible family history of arthritis, and there's a little Alzheimer's mixed in. Now, I took a pretty circuitous path in my journey to purpose, and it involved doing a little modeling in New York and Europe after I finished medical school. Because, yeah, I'm a nerd, a serious science nerd, and I was headed to medical school from the time I was 9 years old. Now, I have a number of identities, and you've just gotten a little sampling of a few of them. I'm also a grandmother. Now, you can ask me afterward how I managed to do that without having a child. But my most recent identity is as a cancer survivor. I developed lung cancer about 8 months ago. I'm a part of an uptick of younger, never smoker women to have this diagnosis. And it's really about prevention that drives me to do what I do. So the concept that I'm introducing to you that hopefully you've already been introduced to is one that is really a function of my having practiced medicine and practiced public health over about the last quarter of a century. And I'd like to ask you, which of these cares is more likely to kill you? Any ideas? Okay. Yeah, so the electric chair, only about 4,400 people have died in the electric chair from 1890 to 1910. I can assure you that hundreds of thousands of people have died because of too much time spent in that office chair. Now, historically, movement was a a fundamental part of living. We burned a lot of calories as hunter-gatherers and when we were an agrarian society. And even as laborers at the turn of the prior century, we still burned a fair number. But as office workers, and then more recently as mouse potatoes, how many people can honestly say they've never sent a text or an email to somebody in the next cubicle? So today, lack of movement is a fundamental part of dying. And the problem here is not that we've suddenly become lazy. This shows you that over the past 30 years or so, it's about the same quarter of us that are willing to take our own leisure time out for active recreation. That's not the issue. The issue is how little obligatory physical activity there is. Now, some of you are old enough to remember the civil rights movement. Raise your hand if you can remember. Okay, so I sure can. And those of you that are familiar with health inequities know that African Americans, Latinos, American Indians have higher rates of obesity than do others. But what do you notice about the people in that slide? They're pretty much as thin as anybody else. Can't say the same thing for the folks now. We're not moving around a whole lot, and that's probably something we need, both from the standpoint of health and also from the standpoint of advocacy. Now, I would ask you, which personal trainer achieved better results? See, that's the ticket, is that we move as human beings when we have to move. We don't typically move when we don't have to move. So we've got to make it obligatory. And how many of you participated in instant recess breaks today? Okay, well, for those that didn't, I think there's one coming up right after this, but just short bouts of physical activity can do so much. And I'm not reading through all of this. You all can catch up with it, but I mean, in addition to the clinical endpoints, decreasing the waistline, blood pressure, percent body fat, also it has a positive effect on appetite. Exercise is a relative appetite suppressant. It causes a thirst for fruits and vegetables, water, and other water-bearing foods and beverages. It helps us with concentration and cognitive processing. So, instant recess, which is the concept that I've been working on for the last 14 years. Instant, because I mean, as Americans, we all want instant. Recess, what's the best branded part of the school day? Recess. So there's a two-pronged approach involved. One is increasing the demand for movement, and the other is increasing the access to movement or the supply of movement. Now, I've spent a lot of time over this last decade or more getting movement to be a part of the policy and practice of various organizations. So this is an example of the administrative kind of office work sites, the DC Department of Public Health. This is from the Post. Kaiser Permanente, right down here in the South Bay. They found that injury rates, as well as the sick days that people claimed, went down with just brief bouts, 3 to 10 minute bouts of activity. Schools, lots of them, thousands of them. We actually have been working with the Padres now heading into the 6th season, getting instant recess breaks into the pregame show, as well as fryer fit, healthier food items like the sweet pepper hummus and baked pita chips with grapes. Bet you didn't think you could find that in a ballpark. This is the Sunday worship service at the Congregational Church in Cleveland, Ohio. And we've been working with corporations as well. We can't solve this in any one sector. So we're trying to build the case to the C-suite for selling these breaks as to why they are in fact making what's good for the waistline, good for the bottom line. And then we're also making it plug and play. By the way, I do have on my Keens. Now, this is a cost-benefit calculator that we developed so you can plug in the number of employees, the average hourly wage, the average number of hours worked, and the industry type. And it'll spit back the number of dollars returned on an investment of $1. So we've calculated that in most industries, it's about $1.50 to $2 for implementing one 10-minute break a day. I'm kind of shifting, though, to more of a focus on the demand side. How do we get more of a groundswell of people wanting this? So being active, obvious. Being an activist, okay, well, those people in public health, we kind of do work toward the public good. But an activist is a new term that I'm coining. And I hope maybe there's some activists in this room today, because we tend to do things that other people do. Getting people moving on a population-wide basis is going to require social norm change, cultural norm change. It's going to require a little peer pressure, which is why the folks at the Post that tried this out said, if other people were doing it, it was great, but if we had to do it alone, we'd rather just take a walk, and usually the walk didn't get done. So Instant Recess is a movement of activists, or we call them spark plugs, and we're dedicated to affecting social change through movement. Now, I've been very privileged to work with the First Lady over the last 2 years, such that the Beyonce Move Your Body video, how many of you are familiar with that? How many of you have done okay, well, that's an Instant Recess knockoff. So you couldn't find a better champion, more credible role model, a better celebrity spokesperson to try to spark a movement to get this country on the go again. And I'm delighted that Michelle Obama is part of it, or I should say I'm delighted to be a part of it with her. And I'm going to hope that a lot of people in this room will answer our wanted ad and become spark plugs. So thank you very much.